Are you sick of eating against your own will? Today we're going to be talking about why you eat foods that you had never planned on eating and how to stop doing that. So many of us have had this exact same scenario happen where we are trying to follow a diet and we do really well for a period of time and we're muscling our way through it. And then something happens where we fall off the wagon. Willpower, in this case, can only take you so far. And there's several things that occur with food that make it really hard to willpower your way into not eating them. First of all, food is constantly around us. It is always in our proximity, whether we're at home, we're out with friends socializing, we're at work, there is food everywhere. We are just living in a society where there is a plethora of food. So food proximity is one issue. Another issue that comes up is food cravings. So there is behaviors within our bodies that cause us to go out and eat certain foods and crave certain foods and certain flavors. And if you're following a diet that is restricting some of those foods and flavors, which many of them are, it can be very hard to constantly try to fight that craving naturally. Finally, there's lots of food associations. We have food that we seek out in response to certain emotions. We have foods that we eat at the certain time of the year for celebrations and holidays and parties. So there's all these reasons that our brains and our bodies want foods that are usually not on our diet. And there is a difference between planning to eat food off protocol. So saying, okay, it's Christmas, I am planning to eat that special treat that my mom makes each year, versus going into it saying, okay, I'm not going to eat any cookies or desserts at the holiday party and then end up eating those desserts. So we are talking about that second scenario where you go into a situation not planning on eating a certain food and then you end up eating that certain food. So stick around and we're going to go through why that happens and how to stop that process. The first step in this process is being aware or bringing awareness to the fact that you're eating. Because a lot of times, especially when we're on a diet that is radically different than how we have been eating, we undergo this process of fog eating. So that means you didn't even realize that you ate that food that was off protocol, or you didn't realize you were actually doing it. There was no moment awareness until towards the end of eating it or even after eating it. So you really have to bring awareness to as early in that process as possible. So when you are actually reaching for the food or bringing the food up to your mouth, that's when you want to start to have that, oh, I'm actually eating this food that I had not planned on. And I know that that may seem so simple and so easy. Obviously, I know what I'm eating and putting in my food, but you would be so surprised if you actually observe what is happening on a regular basis, how frequently we just eat because we're trained to eat. That is what we do. And so you really need to understand when and where and what kind of associations are occurring that you're eating these foods. The way I recommend doing that is keeping a food journal. And a food journal can be super simple. I keep my food journal on my phone in the Notes app. Make it as simple as possible. If you want to keep a little notebook with you with a tiny pen that you write everything down in, that works. If you want to just open up a blank Word document on your computer because you're regularly on your computer, that works as well. It doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need a complicated app or system where you're searching foods. It just needs to be something that you can quickly do. And I'm saying like less than a minute a day is what this takes me. That's what you're aiming for when it comes to a food journal. And anything that goes into my mouth besides water and unsweetened tea or black coffee, anything that otherwise goes into my mouth gets written down. It doesn't have to be proportions or timing or anything like that. Literally just whatever I eat goes on that food list. And that includes like picking things up off of my toddler's plate and putting it in my mouth, or walking by a candy bowl when I'm out and about during the day. Anything goes on that list. And the better that you get at committing to this food journal, doing it regularly and doing it honestly, the more you will start to realize how much that fog eating is occurring. And once you start to bring awareness to that, then you can start to look at, okay, well, is it always when I'm at work and walking by the break room? Or is it always when I get home at night and I'm prepping dinner and I'm stressed and trying to get dinner on the table and keep everybody in line? You need to bring awareness to the foods that you're eating and the situations that that's occurring. That is step number one. After you feel like you are starting to get to the spot where you're noticing that you're eating something that you hadn't planned to before or right as you are eating it, then you can move on to step two. Okay, so step number two is now bringing understanding. So you've brought awareness to the fact that you're eating something that you don't want to. Now we're moving on to understanding why. And I recommend doing this by journaling through the questions as you're eating it. So I'm not saying just stop eating it. I'm saying you want to ask yourself good questions while you're doing it so that you can understand the motivating reason. And once we understand the reason, then we can change it. So I'll write these questions below in the description so that you can easily reference them. But a great place to do this is just in your food journal. And they're really easy. They're not long, 10-minute reflections. They're very quick, like yes, no, 1, 2, 3 answers. What you want to do is journal through these questions as you are eating the food you had not planned on. That may not always be possible, but if you can catch yourself as early in the act of eating that food as possible, these questions will be the most helpful there. If you don't get to it, that's fine. Just move on to the after you have eaten it questions, and that will be fine. But when you can, try to journal on it during eating. The first question is, am I actually hungry? And we're looking for physical hunger, not emotional hunger. Physical hunger means that you would eat like a can of tuna with some salt on it. Like you are to that point where you are wanting to eat. Your stomach is growling, your mouth is watering, you're getting a little low in energy. Your body is actually wanting food. Or if you don't eat tuna, you can think of it as like boiled chicken with a little bit of salt on it. You will eat something that plain because you are actually hungry. Versus emotional hunger is usually directed at a specific food. Are you craving sugar? Are you craving saltiness of like chips or something like that? So if you're not going to eat anything that's in sight, it's probably emotional hunger. And then you should answer this question as no, I'm not actually physically hungry. Question number 2 is, what is my hunger level? So in my online course, the weight loss series, where we're working on losing weight, I have a very specific hunger scale that I recommend you follow to better gauge your proportions and your actual physical fullness and hunger levels. For the sake of this, just go on a scale of, I'm a little hungry. Maybe some water or distraction would do it, or no, I'm starving and we'll eat that entire can of plain tuna right now. So just gauge whatever it feels right to you, whether that's like a scale of 0 being I'm not hungry at all and 10 I'm going to eat my own arm off, versus just really hungry or slightly hungry, whatever works for you, something quick and easy here. Number 3 is, what emotion am I feeling? And try to be very detailed. Get as good of a descriptive emotion that you can here. So not just sad or angry, but really frustrated. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling bored. I'm feeling restless. I'm feeling annoyed. Whatever feels the most true to you in that moment, just name that emotion. The next question is, why do I actually want to eat this? So this one's probably going to require the most reflection as to, why do I actually want to put that food in my mouth? even if I know that it's off of my protocol and I wasn't planning on eating it, what is the reason? Is it true hunger? I am starving and need to eat something now. Is it I want to distract myself from something else that's going on in the world? Is it because everybody else is eating and I don't want to miss out? Sit with that question for a little bit. It doesn't need this long, paragraphs worth of answer. It just needs to be true and honest for you. And remember that nobody else is seeing this. So you don't have to answer to anybody else. This is just for you to bring understanding to why you're doing this. And finally, what is going on in my environment that is contributing to me wanting to eat this? Is it that the kids are losing their minds and running around as you're trying to get dinner on the table? Is it that you're out at happy hour with coworkers and they ordered a bunch of appetizers that look delicious and smell delicious, but you hadn't planned on eating those? You were planning on ordering like a salad with protein. Really reflect on what is occurring around you during this time. All right, so those were the questions for while you were eating or before you were eating that particular food. This next set of questions is for after you finish eating. So if you missed your opportunity to journal, you didn't realize you were eating, or you were at a spot where you couldn't stop and sit and reflect, that's fine. Then go through these questions next. The first question is, what is my hunger or fullness level now? Just like with before, give yourself whatever scale that you want. Would you say that you overate? You weren't that hungry to begin with, and then you added this food on top of it, and now you're feeling extra full? Did you choose a food item that actually didn't meet your hunger needs, so you're still feeling that little twinge of hunger or very hungry? Just go through that so you get an idea of, is that food actually serving you? Next question is, what emotion am I feeling now? And you might be interested to find that maybe you're still experiencing the same emotion that you were before or during eating that food, but maybe you're also feeling an additional emotion like guilt or disappointment or frustration at yourself for eating that food. So think about that one. Are you feeling a couple of emotions? How are you feeling? All right, next question is, how did that food actually taste? And try to be specific here. Don't just say good or bad, but get into it. So say you ate a cupcake at work when you hadn't planned on it. What did that actually taste like? Was the cake portion delicious and perfectly sweet, but you also ate the frosting and it was too sweet and left that kind of, yucky coating on your tongue? If you ate something maybe more savory or salty, did it compare to something that you can make at home that's twice as delicious? Get as specific as possible here of what it really tasted like. All right, and then the last question you want to ask yourself here is, was it worth it eating that food? And that can be a simple yes or no. I would probably say that 9 times out of 10, you will answer no to this question. But be honest with yourself. If you were like, man, I feel like I have been deprived for weeks being on this diet and it was so worth it to eat that food, be honest with yourself. I would put money down that most of the time you will answer no to that question. All right, so you've brought awareness to when you are actually eating food off protocol. Now you're working on understanding what the situation is around eating that food and how you're actually feeling while you're eating that food. Go through that process for a couple of weeks. You want to journal and reflect on, is this always happening at work? Is it always happening at home? Is it always happening when I'm out with friends? Trying to get an idea of when that eating occurs for you. So after you've done that for a couple of weeks and you feel like you have an idea, then you can move on to step number 3. And that is actually working towards changing that behavior if you want to. If you look back on it and you're like, nope, it's worth it every time and I don't want to change anything, great. But if you do want to change, if you want to stop eating things that are off protocol, this is the next step. Eating off protocol can be categorized into kind of 3 big groups. And so having that couple of weeks of reflection will be really helpful for you to figure out which group you fit into. So the first group is that you are actually hungry. You're like, man, every time I eat off protocol, it is because I am starving and need to eat. So that one's probably the easiest to change because you need to just reflect on the rest of your diet and make those tweaks and changes there. Are you not getting enough fat and fiber with your meals so that you are staying full enough until the next meal? Do you need to play with the proportions of your meals? Are you having this like light little bird lunch and then by 3 p.m. you're starving because you're not going to make it to 6 p.m. for dinner? Do you need to really bulk up your prior meal, or do you need to play around with your meal timing? Are you usually not that hungry at lunchtime, but you eat just because that's what we do? We eat at lunchtime. Or are you not that hungry and you could push it back an hour or two so that you get over that 3 p.m. hump? Another consideration would be, are you getting enough water? Because dehydration can be confused for hunger. Hydration throughout the day can also help combat this. So the second category, and probably where the biggest chunk of eating off protocol falls into, is you're eating to buffer emotions. So if you reflected and on your journaling and you're like, man, every time I'm stressed or I'm frustrated or I'm annoyed or I'm lonely, anytime that I was feeling that super uncomfortable negative emotion, that's when I would turn to food and eat off protocol. So there's some things that I want you to consider if you fall into this category most of the time. So first is that food makes emotions go away temporarily. For a very short time while you were enjoying that food, your body and your brain aren't focused on that emotion. And instead, you get that kind of dopamine release from whatever food that you're eating instead, which feels a lot better than the negative emotion that you were trying to avoid with food in the first place. Second is that the emotions will come back. Remember, food only does it temporarily. So once that dopamine hit wears off from the food, then that emotion that you were experiencing will start to seep back in. And unfortunately, it's usually compounded with the guilt and disappointment of eating food off protocol. So it's compounded and it's actually worse. You feel worse after you eat food to buffer emotions than if you had not eaten in the first place. But what are you left to do with this negative, yucky emotion? You want to do two things here. The first and most important is to just give yourself permission to stop feeling that second emotion. So stop feeling the guilt or disappointment or shame for eating off protocol. And the reason why I say that is because it doesn't serve you. If you could guilt yourself into not eating things that you don't want to eat, why hasn't it worked so far? Why are you watching this video? Guilt and shame do not result in effective behavior change. Say that you're human and you're learning this new process and you're going to make mistakes, and let yourself off the hook first and foremost, because then you don't have to deal with compounding negative emotions that you just still want to turn to food to stop feeling. Okay? So let yourself off the hook. Give yourself grace. Love yourself. It's okay. And then the next step is to learn to feel the emotion instead of trying to buffer it away, which again is not going to work over long term. Learn to feel the emotion. And that is one of the hardest and greatest skills that we can learn as humans. So approach the emotion with curiosity, really trying to get into, okay, what does this actually feel like? Don't get latched on to the story behind it. Well, I'm feeling frustrated because so-and-so did this. That's not what your goal is here. Your goal is to say, okay, what does frustration feel like? Do I feel it in my head? Do I feel it in my chest? Do I feel it in my back or my stomach? Do I feel it in my hands? Does it feel hot or cold? Does it feel like there's a color associated with it? Things like that. You want to get very detailed and curious as to what the emotion actually feels like in your system. And then watch it over time. Because if you let go of the story of why you're feeling this is just perpetuating the emotion. But if you actually feel your feeling and watch it with time, it usually evolves, it usually dampens, it usually lessens. And for some of them, it will go completely away. Some, it will sit there with you and you're going to have to continue to work with it, but it feels so much easier to work with it when it's at that lower, less intense level. And that gets you to a point where you don't need to feel like you need to buffer with food. And again, you will likely not be successful at this at the very first try, or the 10th try, or the 100th try. But if you keep doing this, eventually you will learn how to feel emotions and work through emotions over eating to buffer away your emotions just to have them come back later. And then the third big category where eating off protocol falls into is environmental factors. So there's just things occurring in your environment. And again, try to separate that out from something happens in your environment and you experience emotion that you want to buffer. It's more just food is in your environment or something is happening in your environment and you're just used to eating. For example, social situations. So happy hour with coworkers, if you always eat, even though you're not hungry, even though you hadn't planned on it, that could be an environmental factor. Another one is celebrations and holidays. So you go over to your family's house for whatever holiday you're celebrating, and they have all of these delicious foods, and you just eat them because that's what you do every year on this holiday. I have 2 ways to combat that. And first is to plan ahead. So really sit down and say, okay, at happy hour, all of my friends will have a sugary cocktail and an appetizer. I am going to plan on ordering a seltzer water with lime and not eat any appetizers, and I'm okay with that. For family gatherings, you could say, okay, I know my favorite dish is my grandma's X, Y, and Z dish. So I'm going to have a little bit of that, but otherwise I'm going to choose only vegetables. You could also plan ahead in a way that you say, like, okay, this holiday comes once a year and I want to enjoy and celebrate and have all of these foods. Just plan that so that you can say, okay, I'm going to have 1 of these cookies instead of 10 of these cookies. I'm going to have 1 serving of something instead of 3 servings of something. So just plan ahead for what you can anticipate. The other big way to combat this is to distract yourself. So whether that is going for a walk, whether that's, again, drinking something else like a seltzer water or a bubbly water or something like that. That can also be, okay, I'm just going to chew some gum so that I know that I can't sit there and eat the chips and salsa at the restaurant. Just find a way to do something else with your hands and your mouth that is apart from food in these situations. So get creative and come up with ways that you can plan ahead and distract yourself for these environmental aspects of wanting to eat when you're not planning on it. All right, guys, that's what I have for you. If you're consistently noticing that you are stressed out and that is contributing to you wanting to eat to buffer that emotion, go ahead and head to my website to download my free guide on 5 techniques to lowering stress and cortisol levels in minutes. Sometimes just lowering the intensity of that emotion will allow you to work through it without the use of buffering with food. So you can head over to selfhealingwithdrashley.com to get that free guide. Also, check out the weight loss series if you're working on weight loss. It has lots of tips and tricks just like this to help you get down to that goal weight. Until next week, we'll see you.